Cool. Hey, welcome to Red River Podcast. This would be episode 127. As you keep counting down numbers on podcasts, like it fucking matters, but do it anyway. It's just like, I guess maybe we feel accomplished once we, break past 100.
You should, man. That's a
Right.
big number, you know?
It started off like where we would do it like pretty regularly, but just like anything, when you have other people involved in like other interests, because this is like a passion project, you get to talk to people like you that make movies and shit like that, and directors and musicians. So it's like that stuff's cool. And then when something else takes over for a couple of weeks, then we do that, so especially music, which you're a big music guy as well. But anyway, listen, today we have Anthony Natoli on the show. You do a lot of things, which is probably how you got the nickname Obi-Wan Natoli, I would imagine. But today we're going to talk about some movies and some music, probably eventually. But you just directed a movie, and it's called Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So I mean, just I don't know. Let's kick it off there.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a wild ride, 5 years of shooting and editing and reshooting and all that stuff. This is I keep telling people, but this is my threat level midnight, if you know the reference. But it's a I never had aspirations to make a movie, really. It wasn't like, maybe in the back of my mind, I always thought it would be cool to do something like this, but it never really felt attainable. And then when the iPhone 5 came out, that's when like my mind shifted. I had already kind of come up with the script for it, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then when the iPhone really started hitting its stride with the slow motion, I was like, I think we could do it with this. This could be a really cool thing. And
What
that's where we sit today.
what is your relationship with movies though? Because like a lot of us, like I'm pretty much a cinephile. I mean, obviously this
Yeah.
a big part of what we talk about on the podcast, but what is your relationship with movies that you would even feel like that you would want to make a movie?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny. I don't know if I ever had any even like aspirations to maybe even score a film or anything like that when I was younger. It really felt very far away
Oh
from
yeah.
possibility.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I had a neighbor down the street from me. This is kind of like my Tarantino working at a movie store kind of story, but not quite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't work. I didn't work at a movie store, a video store, or anything like that. But my neighbor Sonny, um, he had this place called Gibson Flicks. It was right around the corner from my house, and I would go there every day during the summer and rent a movie. And he told me, he said, "Listen, Anthony, if you bring me $1 every day, you could take out as many movies as you want all day long." So I said, "Okay." And by the end of like one summer, I had watched, I think, it didn't matter what it was, like every freaking movie in that store. And one of the things that was like awesome about that experience was just like, it's like music. As a musician, I can't avoid diving very deeply into listening at CBS, with whatever's going on above me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's distracting. But there's something beautiful and amazing about all music, whether I like it or not, in a way. Recorded music. There's tons of songs that I love the recording of it, but I don't really care for the song or whatever. And I think the same went with movies, where it was like, I don't really like this movie, but that was, it's amazing they made it, and I like this actor, or I recognize this guy from another film. And uh, I think that was my education in kind of like getting like an understanding of what a good film looked like and what a C-list movie would look like. And I like everything in between, but from all the Adam Sandler kind of films to like Jodorowsky, there's a big spectrum out there. And I think if you really dive in to a multitude of genres, you'll start becoming that cinephile that you were talking about, where it's you're looking for something and not too much from anything, you know. And I think that's sort of my viewpoint at watching films these days. Is just like, what can I get out of this, you
Yeah,
know?
and so like when you're going to like this video store, like off the top of your head, like what are some, like give me like two or three movies that really kind of like blew you away.
Blew me away. I mean, I got to be honest, you know, Steven Spielberg to this day to me is still the greatest of all time. I didn't know who Steven Spielberg was until I had heard his name mentioned, like, you know, a multitude of times, and went, oh, that's the guy that did Jaws and Indiana Jones and E.T. and had a lot to do with Back to the Future and The Goonies. And I'm like, we're making a pretty long list of my favorite movies from one guy right
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But that's not to say like I don't enjoy, Darren Aronofsky. I love his films so much,
Me too, me too.
Uh, but back then, things that hit me pretty hard. Actually, I was really like I loved watching the making of. That was my favorite thing, like above all watching the movies. Like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade was one of those movies I was like, I love watching the production of it, and I would watch that movie like 1,000 times. Um, but I mean, like I liked a lot of different things. Uh, I remember renting Father of the Bride one time, and my parents
Yes.
were like, "Why are you watching this?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's Steve Martin. He's great,
Yeah,
and Martin Short." And I don't know if you know the movie Clifford with
yeah, of
Martin
course.
Short, but I must have watched that and rented that movie like 1,000 times. I just thought that was. I love Martin Short, man. Like I was a big comedy guy when I was younger. I loved all the Sandler movies and stuff too. So
And it's,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it's funny. Yesterday we were talking about remakes, and I'm trying to remember. God, I don't remember why it came up, but somebody suggested, he's like, you know what, they should remake, The Three Amigos. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like
not happening
that
today.
movie, that movie's perfect. Like, why would you like
Yeah,
remake something that was good or had a good idea, but it just wasn't presented well, or maybe production value? Like, go
how
like
about
the
just let Mel Brooks make another movie? Because
yeah,
I'm sure it'll be amazing. Like, what, we already have that. Like, let's
yeah.
move forward. I mean, that was like a golden era too of like comedy to me with film. I think Spaceballs is like the one. It's probably I like it more than Star Wars. I grew up watching that movie, and like I thought it was part of the Star Wars canon before I even like was into Star Wars. So it was kind of confusing at first. But I mean, Rick Moranis was so funny in that, and all those
He's
types
the
of movies.
best.
Like,
Like, he's
yeah, just
like,
make a sequel. Like,
so
I don't know.
Rick Moranis like went in and out, like, like obviously everyone knows his story, but like when you look at his filmography, it's almost pretty perfect. Like, you look at
Yeah.
everything he did from like Parenthood to like Ghostbusters, and you're just like, yo, this dude like went in and out, and just like his batting average on these movies is fucking amazing.
And I
So
think that comes from like choosing the right things. And honestly, Rick Moranis is like one of the most artistic like actors in my opinion, in the sense that he's like, it has to resonate with me or I'm not doing it. And I think you kind of see that even though his films are like campy and like quirky, like he chose to be a part of the right things, and he chose what not to be a part of. And I think is what makes the difference between like a legendary person and then like an actor for hire kind of thing. That's just like, I think Nicolas Cage is one of those guys. He just takes everything, and that's one way of doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, for
wow,
me, I can't jump in on something I don't believe in. I
he
have to see it. I have to feel it, and I think that's an important thing. And guys like him are definitely an inspiration to me to be like, don't do it for the paycheck. Don't do it for the glory. Do it for you. You think it's going to be something that you can be a part of and make something greater than yourself and lasting. And that's kind of always that's been my mantra for a long time, is like be involved in the right stuff,
And
you know?
you, I mean, so, most people, when they make their first movie, it's always like a horror movie or something just
Yeah.
completely different. I think you wrote something pretty unique in Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So like all these things that, like these movies and that crept into your brain as a kid. How do you, then move forward, because you wrote and directed this, and it's, I'll let you explain what it is, because I don't want to give away like spoilers too much, but
Yeah. I
it's
mean, I
very,
don't know who we're spoiling it for. We'll see
well,
what happens.
I have to, I don't
Yeah.
know if
I
someone,
appreciate it.
yeah, if someone listens to this, I don't know, but it's basically
Yeah.
like family, it's pretty like heavy on family, the tragedy, and just kind of, going for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a unique, script, I think. So like, how'd you come, like, why'd you want to tell this story basically?
So, well, just to give you a little background, like I grew up a fat kid in elementary school, middle school, all the way or almost all the way through high school. Then I started losing a little weight, but part of that made me the underdog, in the sense like people wrote me off. I would sit at home on Friday nights and try to learn every note of Master of Puppets guitar solo while my friends are out drinking and stuff. Like I was very into my craft of being a good artist and musician, and I think a lot of people thought I wouldn't amount to much because I was not like antisocial, but I kind of had an attitude like a little more punk rock than a lot of the kids in my high school that I went to school with, that I was going to be a musician and I was going to be an artist, and I couldn't care what you were doing. So I kind of wanted to write that into the story a little bit, where these two brothers who inherit this little 67 Dodge Dart and go drag racing with, that they have the same attitude in a way where it's like, I don't care what anybody says, and whoever doubts me and whatever, I'm gonna take a shot. And I think that's like the Rocky thing that I always loved, was like, and resonated with, was like, oh, here's this guy from the streets. I'm not from the streets, from the Long Island suburbs, but I felt, a kinship. He's this Italian guy, that a lot of people doubt him, and go, okay, let's see what we can make. Let's see what we can go out and make happen. And let's do it with our arms tied behind our back too. Let's shoot it on an iPhone and do it super low budget with friends and family. And the script, it's kind of an interesting story, but I was sleeping in a strange bed one night, that it was very hot. I'll never forget it. And so I always like lucid dream when I'm like not comfortable, you know, sleeping. And I had this dream. I walked into a movie theater and there was one person sitting in the middle of the theater, and it was me. And I walked up to myself, and the other version of me said, "Sit down. We're gonna watch this movie, and you made it. So when you wake up, write everything down." And
Wow, that's
I
pretty
I
that's
think,
pretty crazy.
yeah. And I watched the whole movie, and after it was over, I was like, "Wow, it's really awesome." And I kind of started having this moment in my head that I was like, oh, I just made this movie up in my sleep. That's pretty cool. And again, the other version of me said, write this down when you wake up. So as soon as I woke up, I grabbed a pen and paper. I wrote everything I could remember down. And sometimes when you do that and you wake up and you like look back, you're like, what the hell was I talking about? This is a terrible idea. But it was one of those ones where I was like, this is a good idea. Like I should make this movie, because the type of racing that these kids do, it's something that anybody can do. It goes off like a handicap system, so even you could have the slowest car around and still race the fastest car, because it gives you a handicap, and there's this whole rules and regulations to it, which we teach you in the film.
Yeah.
But I had never seen a film like that before that was on that topic. I've seen a lot of Fast and the Furious kind of movies, and I hate those kind of movies. Like it just, you're either doing a burnout or you're lifting the wheels off the ground, and it can't be both, you know. But I would watch these films and be like, I want to make a more authentic racing movie that, because I drag raced. I grew up racing. I had started in go-karts, and I started um I started drag racing when I was like 14 in a 73 Plymouth Duster. And I lived this life. I went pretty far with drag racing up until a point where my band was either I was going to sign to Capitol Records with my band, or I was going to continue trying to make it in drag racing, and I chose music. So I guess this movie is like a culmination of like a lot of my life experience, although it's not autobiographical in any way. It I wanted to tell my truth, something that I believe, like, I know a lot about this subject, and I think I could pull this off, and I think I could pull it off without having a movie star in the film, and I think I could pull it off using my aunt, who was like a dispatcher, and saying like, hey, listen, I need you to say these lines, and let's see how this fits. And then she's doing that, and then on the other end of it, I have John Nolan being a cop, and somehow it just started working. It started piecing together, and it was a long process, because I sat on the script for probably like 5 years until the iPhone hit, and that was when I was like, I'm going to develop the script,
All
and
right,
I'm going
so
to see what happens.
but like so like you think of the script, like after the dream, like do you have any like know-how on how to write a script, or is it like a
No,
screenplay no, right? So everything you
no,
everything you do is just like, like what most of us do is just like, I guess we'll figure it out as we go. And from there, like when did you, like, I guess when the iPhone comes out, you're just like, I think I could do this, and you start like rounding everyone up, I kind of, right?
yeah, I actually said to myself, like, okay, this is a big project. I was smart enough to know like I wasn't ready for it yet, but because I honestly never even picked up a camera before I got that iPhone. I had like a terrible cell phone with a terrible camera on it, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, I'm gonna shoot 4 music videos this year before I even start to work on this movie, to
Yeah.
see if I can make anything that looks resembling like a film, or a visual artistic expression, because I was kind of green to the form. But after the first video, I was like, I think I got it, but I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna stay true to my word. So I made one song for every season of the year, shot a video for it. And by the end of the last one, I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I know what to do. Which I didn't, but I felt that way, and that's
So
a good feeling.
where are these videos at? Like, can we watch these videos?
Yeah, they're on my YouTube channel. You can go
Okay.
check them out. It's funny to watch them now, because it's like, you always look back and you go, ooh, and I wish I had known this then or that. But at the same time, I look at it and I go, well, this is me growing. This is me showing people, like, I didn't come out of this, being perfect or anything, and I don't think anybody really does. But I think it shows that my progression, and I like that. I like having, like, when I look at bands, especially when you hear their early demos compared to their like hit record, there's usually a huge growth spurt that happens between there.
Sometimes,
And
sometimes it's
sometimes,
funny, like how the flip side, where they come out swinging hard, and then from there they turn into something different. But yeah, like and what I love about this and like technology, and it's funny how some people shit on technology. I'm like, I'm like, it's great. I'm like, I don't know.
oh yeah,
You could talk to your friend who lives in like Ireland, or you could fucking just be like, hey, I'm going to make a music video with my friends, and we're going to put it up on YouTube. Because MTV doesn't exist. Like, there's so many cool things you could do now. It's like, hey, I'm going to record a song during one of our sets, and I'm going to turn it into a video, and I'm going to add some filters. I'm going to make a movie on an iPhone, and you fucking do it, because like, if you want to do something bad enough, you'll figure out how to do it, and technology now allows that. It's just, I love it. I don't know how anyone could not love
there's
it.
no excuse today. Yeah, there's no excuse. Like, if you want to do something, it's on you, because I watched Steven Spielberg's first film, and talk about a guy coming out and like
Is that
crushing it right off the
was
bat.
that Duel?
Duel,
Yeah.
which actually is funny because he's driving a Dodge Dart in the whole movie, and that's the main
The main
car
car,
we
yeah.
used in our film, which is kind of cool. But I mean, that was a made-for-TV film, and it rocked the world. Like people were like, "This dude is a legend already," because he did this on such a low budget. What happens if we give him millions, and then he makes Jaws and all these things? And I kind of looked at that and I was like, I kind of want that to be hopefully my story if I ever get past this first round. Is like, I want to swing for the fence here. I want my first film to be, as absolutely great as I can make it. And I did everything I could to make the best film possible. And I think at the end of the day, we watched it like last week again at like a little test screening, and I was like, it was the first time I stood back from it and was like, holy crap, I can't believe we did this. This is
Yeah.
nuts. Like, and I got very emotional. I started like tearing up a little bit, like on like the most ridiculous part of the film, because I was so happy that I'm looking at like my best friends up on the screen. I'm like, we are forever now. Like if even like if this movie does nothing and whatever, it's like I have this little snippet of my life where I'm like, I rounded up my friends, anybody that wanted to be a part of this, and now it exists in this little thing. And
That's
I think the story actually came out much better than I anticipated. So, we have a lot of technical errors. We had you again, when you watch the film, you see my progression. There's things that we shot last where at that point I had shot a lot of cool stuff. I did a lot of much higher quality things. And so then that's in the film, but it's also butted up right against like day one where I was unsure of how to do sound and all these things. And somehow it works, it's just good enough to marry together and become this whole thing. And when you watch it in one fell swoop, you're like, oh, okay, it works. But it took a
what,
lot of
what was the what was the
persuasion on my end.
what was the guidance though? Like, like the first day of shooting, like I know some people shoot out of order and stuff like that. They're like, okay, like
Yeah.
what are you looking at on the sheet that you have? Like, what was like, because you said this is all new. So like, what was the undertaking like? Like, what was the itinerary, basically, the bullet points?
Yeah. Well, a lot like writing a song. I like to know where I'm going. I like to have. I think of art as like a bridge, and usually for me, I see the end result first, and like
Yeah.
I knew the end of the movie before I even like, because even though I had that dream, that's not what you're seeing on screen. Like it's relative to it, but a lot of things changed. Actors didn't show up, or one guy, the guy that plays our uncle Sal, he had to go shoot another movie, so I had to like write him out, which was not something I had anticipated.
He's good. I
But
like that
so,
guy.
oh, he's
Yeah.
amazing, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
He I loved sitting in the theater and hearing all the dads crying and sniffling when, he has this big moment. And that to me is like the the sign of greatness, like that you could push these masculine dudes to tears. I love that. And because I think like part for me, the film had to be like a wheel of emotion. I didn't want it to be a comedy or a horror film or just a drama or an action movie. I wanted it all. I wanted a little taste of everything so that it felt like life, because
It did.
life has.
It worked, man, because it did have all those things. Because when you were talking about comedy, I was like, oh, the movie does have some like comedic elements, but then you get like the phone call, like we were talking about with that dude Sal, and then you kind of see like, basically, like I don't want to say like the whole like heart of the movie, but you kind of do see like,
The emotional peak of the film, I
yeah,
think.
for sure,
And
yeah.
I that was one thing I felt like confident that I was doing right, was putting the right people in the right position. And being in a band, you understand this, like if you don't have the right guitar player or the right piano player or drummer, and people aren't playing their role properly, it's off-putting. But we had this guy, I'm friends with Joe Pontillo. He's a comedian that I'm friends with. And when I was casting the film, I was like, I need him to be this relief. I need this like icebreaker guy. And he made me laugh so hard, like filming it. I was like, it's gonna work. And then when we were editing it, it worked. And when we were in the theater, it worked. And I think part of making a film that is important is casting the right people in the right role, and also not overshooting. Like I don't think I'm that, uh, I'm not a very good actor. I had a lot of trouble with it at first because I'm directing it and trying to be in it. And I didn't even really want to be in it at first. I wanted to cast somebody else and just be the director. But I had bumped into Ed Burns, the filmmaker,
Yeah.
uh, and spoke to him briefly. And the biggest piece of advice he gave me was cast yourself. Make sure you're in there because you'll be able to modulate when things go wrong because it'll go wrong. And it was true. So, and it was also a great learning experience for me to empathize with the actors and say like, okay, I know how you feel. I know how this feels to be on the other side of this. How do I make you feel comfortable? But I was kind of used to that because I've been producing music since I was young and worked with a lot of artists and a lot of younger people. And I felt like making them feel comfortable in the skin they have to be in is very key and something that I didn't feel was too foreign to me. And I think that's something where maybe some directors do fall short on is they lack that like musicality or something where they're not they're not in tune with all the elements that are happening. Because I think the great directors, even Spielberg, is talking to John Williams and like, this is the tempo, this is the key, this is the instruments I want to be hearing. And then that informs what the actors are going to do because that informs your direction towards them. And so having the right people in the right spot made that super easy. And playing music my whole life, if you have the wrong drummer in the wrong band, I mean, it feels
Yeah.
weird,
Yeah.
and that's the key element is having those roles filled properly.
Ed Burns is a good Yoda for sure. I mean
Yeah, man.
that guy's got some really good stuff under his belt for sure. She's the One, I think, was him too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Brothers McMullen. He was in Saving Private Ryan. He grew up on my corner of my street, so
Oh
he went
wow.
to the same high school as me, and he's older than me, obviously, but um, it was very inspiring being a young person and going to that same video store and renting the Brothers McMullen, which just won Sundance and is blowing up and making all this money, and putting it on at my house, and then seeing my block and my like all these locations that I grew up, living in on my TV and going, this is amazing. But
Yeah.
it also opened this door to like the possibility, like, oh, you could do it too, without even really knowing it. Because when the iPhone came out and I like looked at what it could do, I said, I what if Ed Burns had what if Steven Spielberg had this when he was making his first film? He probably could have made it for $0, and that was kind of what happened for me. I didn't have a big budget. I didn't have any budget. I saved some scrap, change and all, whatever I could put together to buy pizza for everybody and cover people's gas and tolls to get to the drag strip and to the locations. And the locations I bought food for everybody. Like that was our budget, and we made it happen. And it would have been great to have 50, $100,000, but I think again having nothing and making something with it shows people what you could do if you had
Yeah.
a little bit. And I
It's
think that's what happened for him.
it's the best. Something as simple, like I'll relate it to me. Having like the last album we put out, I had an idea for the cover, which was like a creep show thing. And it's like, oh, this is the idea. And
The
then
head.
next thing you know, like Eric's like in a hot tub where my friend's plays, my friend's taking a picture, my other friend Mariko's putting it. And when it's done, I was like, on a smaller scale, like it's just great to be surrounded with friends that are like that all do something and they're all into the idea of like, let's make something. Like I maybe
I'll
I
say this too. yeah, to name drop real quick, but James Morano was like
Oh
this
yeah.
angel that ascended from the skies to me because when I first started doing the film, I was gonna grab a few friends that were good with the camera, and they did, and they came out and they helped me because I knew I was gonna be in it, and I knew I would need somebody on the other side of the camera to help me. But it was getting very tough very quick, and to the point where I was almost getting disheartened because I was like, I'm not getting what I think I could get, and all of a sudden I needed a drone operator for something, and James just fell out of the sky and said like, I'll drive 4 hours to Pennsylvania to help you do this. I was like, all right, I don't know this guy, but whatever. And he came out and he was like the third camera. We had like one main film camera, then we had like a second phone that was like a little bit older, but just to capture, background or whatever. And then James had his camera. And then I remember going through the dailies and being like, everything James shot, I could use. And
Yeah.
it was this moment I was like, I need him to be a part of this, and he wanted to be a part of it. And then 5 years later, now we're shooting all these amazing films and things like that for other people, and um, that's the best part about jumping into projects like this. You just wind up with a whole new set of information and friends and experiences, and you can't take that away from somebody. Even if you make the worst film of all time, you're still going to learn something. You're still going to meet people that push you to do better. And that was definitely one of those people that came in. I was like, this is going to make my life a
Yeah.
lot easier and better.
We
So,
we we worked with James on a video, and he is definitely an ace in the hole, man. That dude is
oh
like,
my God,
he came out with his segue, and we were just like, oh, this dude ain't
he's
playing
the
games.
funniest dude.
And a
Yeah.
sweetheart and super talented,
Yeah.
can't say enough about him.
I love James. Yeah.
Um, so now that like the movie's done, like what's like the plan for it? Like I don't even know. Like what, like everything is such a
To
learning
do your
curve.
podcast.
Ha! Aside from us having a conversation, what are your options? Like, I don't know. Like, how does
I
that even
have
work?
no idea, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think of that Joker thing where he says, even if I caught the car, I'm like a rabid dog. I wouldn't know what to do with it. I I've gotten there, and now I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I'm just trying to navigate the best way I can. I'm going into like all my learnings from being in a band and saying like, all right, well, probably a good idea to make t-shirts. That's a good one. Let's make some stickers. Let's have some things to hand out to people just to be like, hey, go check out what we did. And that's like some of like the basic stuff that I started doing. But now we're entered into a bunch of film festivals, and the Toronto Independent Film Festival just came back and gave us an award for uh, best
Mobile.
film on a mobile film. Yeah, sorry. Which was, I mean, that's our first response, and I don't probably need any other ones. I'm like, wow, that's really very cool. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm in Sundance now, and we'll see what happens. And um, uh, I hope that I could figure out a way to get this thing distributed, I guess, in some way. I have no idea how to do any of that stuff. I wish there was like an easy way to like just upload it to Amazon. And I might wind up just doing like, oh, here's the YouTube link, and um, you could pay $1 or something like that. So I have no idea. But for right now, we're just in the film festivals. We're gonna do some more screenings. We're doing a showing up at the drag strip that we shot at because all those guys brought out their cars and
Where
were
is that, by the
so
way?
helpful. It's in Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania. It's not far from Gettysburg,
Okay.
about a 4 hour ride. And that was a big undertaking, was to get half of my Long Island crew out to Pennsylvania. I think we shot out there like 4 times, and it was not easy, but they made it easy for me, as easy as it could be. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. Just trying to get it out there and share it with people that might dig it. It's unfortunate that it's like such a like the world is filled with like Fast and the Furious is that I think a lot of people kind of see this type of film and they go, I'm, not interested in that. But I've had like all the moms and and my aunts and stuff that came to see the film. They left and they were like, "What a great story!" Oh, I didn't think I was gonna like it, and I'm like, well, that's good because I didn't want it to just be a car movie that only dudes that are into gasoline are into. I wanted everybody to be able to watch this and go like, oh, that was cool. Like I'll be honest with you, I like sports movies way more than sports. I don't even really watch sports. I love playing sports as a kid. I played baseball as a pitcher. Um, Loved it. But I watch Rocky and I don't really care about boxing, but I love watching Rocky. And I
Yeah.
don't care about football, but I love Rudy. And there's all these films that I'm like it or The Wrestler. I wasn't a huge wrestling fan growing up, but Aronofsky, the
Aronofsky.
way
Yeah.
he directed that film, I was
Yeah.
like, I want my film to feel like that, where it doesn't matter if you're not into the sport, you're gonna love the story. And that was like the key thing for me was that there was this story that was happening with the backdrop of drag racing. And we actually it's not a period piece, but we had no cars after 1974 in the film. And we did that on purpose to try to build this aesthetic of like when was this film made? It
That's
kind of looks like it.
interesting. Yeah, because it does say like a few years later. No, right? We're like
Yeah.
after, and
Hmm.
I mean, and then you do have like the 50s cars, so like it can be like this. It
Yeah,
really can be 74.
yeah, that was sort of the plan was because like I said to myself, I'm like, I don't want to write like December 10th, 1954, like on the screen. I was like, just let the cars tell people and inform people maybe what time it is. And then a few years later is 1974. Let's not say it's 1974. Let's just let people use their imagination because people are a lot smarter than you think. And when you don't see a Honda Civic in the background, you're like, I don't know. I guess I'm then. You're not
or a
thinking about it.
cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of my favorite parts of the movie is like the whole movie goes and then the credits come up and then just for like 5 seconds it just says shot on iPhone.
Yeah.
And man, every time we've shown it to people, it's like piercingly loud clapping because there's this moment even that I had where it's like that was shot on an iPhone. Damn, that's crazy. And even myself, I'm impressed by it. And it's not just because I did it. I'm also impressed by what the technology is allowing to happen. That we're on this huge screen, and I'm holding the phone in my pocket that we shot it on. It's nuts. You don't walk into a theater with your red camera in your pocket. That you shot this multi-million-dollar film on. So there was this kind of strange feeling of like a major accomplishment just through pushing something that it's afforded to everybody. Everybody's got a phone in their
It's
pocket,
like
so
you
you
said.
write a good story, go
Yeah.
make it.
Something from nothing is always like, maybe that's like the punk rock roots in what we do.
Yeah,
It's always, you always feel that it's like something from nothing, and
I'm a
it's,
DIY guy. Like
yeah.
I don't like handing things off to people very often unless I like trust them like completely. And even then I'm like watching because I'm like I have an idea. I have a vision. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to listen to my peers and somebody tell me like, "Oh, this is whack" or "This is not working." Like, I'm very, I'm very conscious that I have to listen to people, but I'm also very confident that at this point in my life, like, I trust my taste buds. I know what I want. I know what I like. I don't like excess. I don't like having, too much of anything. I like minimalism, and that's always because I think we talked about the period piece kind of thing. Like if you shove things down people's throats, sometimes then they're looking for a reason to knock you down. Like, oh, I saw a satellite dish in the background. It's like, well, I never told you that it was 1974. So
Yeah.
but if you don't give them all the information and you let their imaginations build some of the world, I think that's more fun filmmaking. Like I like going to the movies for the fun of it. I don't like going to the movies. Sometimes you want to learn, you watch it a documentary or whatever. But I go to the movies to have fun. I want to enjoy it. I want my imagination to run wild. And I also wanted to afford that to my viewers by not shoving all this information down their throat and let them build some type of ether that's happening
No,
between
yeah.
other characters and stuff, you know?
When it comes to movies too, like sometimes some people first of all, it's just so much easier to like knock everything now because everyone's like, oh, like let me run to this page to tell everyone how much I hated something. I'm just like, all
Oh
right.
my God.
It's like ridiculous. I'm thinking like if you don't like something, like I would never want to ruin, I just don't want to ruin anything for anyone, you know?
Oh man, there's too many people that are haters out there. I mean, I have them. Everybody that is an artist has them. People either are jealous of what you're doing, or they just want to rip you apart for no reason. I don't understand it sometimes, and it's it's not it's not appealing to me to be that way. Like the most important thing I think we could do for each other in this short period of time we are alive, support one another, help one another, and be a part of a community of people that push each other to do better. And I'm not interested in working with anybody that doesn't have those things in the forefront of their mind. Like, I want people that are going to push me, people that are going to inspire me, and people that are going to also pick up the torch, and I'll help them when I can, you know, because we want to reciprocate, obviously. But there's a lot of people like I just watched the new Obi-Wan show, and the comments on the
oh,
message boards and all that
yeah.
stuff. I'm more of a I'm just watching it happen, but it's like I don't know what you expect. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you read these comments and you're like, what did you want out of this that you didn't get? You know what I mean? And
There's too
um,
much Obi-Wan.
yeah, it's like
Or
what? I
so,
don't know. This is Star Wars. This is stupid. Like this is just for fun. Like don't you know? But I mean, I don't really concern myself with that kind of stuff anymore. Like I just kind of put my head down and keep moving because I don't have time for that.
I don't,
You know?
yeah, there's no like, I've maybe like 10 years ago, like, you know, when Facebook first started being a thing, you go back and forth with people. And then
Hmm.
one day I'm like arguing with someone, and I think they were like in the Midwest, and I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like, I don't even
Yeah,
know. We didn't even know we existed. Like, what do
I've
I
been there too,
care?
man. Yeah, I've
What
gotten
do I
into it with
care?
people. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like just keep going, keep putting your head down and trying trying to make something and just move on. Like I don't think hanging on to one note for too long is a good idea. You know what I mean? And sitting there and arguing back and forth about, you know, was Flea good in Star Wars? I don't care. Like he was there. It was cool. Move on.
I thought
You
you were
know,
gonna say in Baby Driver, because I was gonna say Flea was great in Baby
I
Driver.
haven't seen that. Everybody keeps telling me to see Baby
Oh,
Driver. I
are
gotta.
you kidding? So, all right.
I'll
So,
tell you something real quick. But
yeah.
there was some movies that people were like, "You should watch this," and I was like, "I don't want to watch that because I don't want it to affect what's going on in my head." Because
Okay.
I would see all these car. I watched a lot of old car movies before I started, you know, making this one, Vanishing Point, American Graffiti, Two Lane Blacktop, like all these like classic car movies. And I was like, I want to watch stuff that came before the era I'm shooting in. And if I'm watching, like, I love Driver, you know, with, I'm sorry, Drive,
Drive,
with,
yeah. Gosling,
what's his name?
Ryan Gosling.
Gosling, you know, but I'm like, that's not informing me right now.
No.
And it's going to distract me. But that is one of those movies that's on my list that I still haven't done. But you like Baby Driver? That was a good one.
So for me, I just love Edgar Wright, man. Edgar Wright is just
Mm.
a fucking genius. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Like he did Shaun of the Dead,
Mm-hmm.
Scott Pilgrim. I mean, he's just got a great style.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite of his movies. He just did Last Night in Soho, which I think just hit
Mm-hmm.
HBO Max, and he just has such a style. And especially Baby Driver is just, it's very car centric, very soundtrack heavy, and it's just I love a good caper movie. I love a good
Yeah.
caper movie.
Yeah, I'll
And
say this part of the problem with some of that stuff to me, which I didn't want to happen, was you start lusting after things you can't get. So, with the iPhone, it has a lot of limitations. Depth of field is a big one that's difficult, and it's a little bit easier now. They have all these adapters, you could put lenses on it and stuff. But when I was starting this, we didn't have that technology yet, or it was very unattainable for me. And I was looking at these films and going, look, they're doing things with the camera that I can't. So what I need to do is just look at what I could do and make this movie with a very old school approach, where it's like, here's what's native to the camera. This is what it could do. Let's not try to make it something that's not too much, because then I think you're getting into this territory where it's like, it looks like it wants to be high budget, but it's not making that marker. And I was like, I don't want that. I want it to feel old school, like run and gun,
it
mean
feels
streets,
it feels, I could see Mean Streets, to be honest with you. Especially like just the hangout scenes, for sure. And the actual filter used on the film definitely also gives it that feel too, like very, like, if we want to say 70s, it does have that flavoring for sure.
Yeah, James wants to do a black and white version, which I would like to see. And then I'd like to do another cut or another color edit where it's like super modern look, aesthetic, like just to have like a couple of different options that like it's like it kind of changes the way you watch the movie when you do that. I once just took a filter and threw it over the whole thing and made it black and white. I was like, I feel like I'm watching a totally different movie, which is insane. That coloring is such an important aspect of of filmmaking. And so I felt like if I colored it or we went too much in a realm of modernism, we're not really going to hit that mark where, Drive is hitting. Or actually, what was a good influence for me too was Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
I thought that was like absolutely spectacular. It's one of the best car movies I've ever seen, just because I think the cinematography is amazing, the sound design is incredible, and the look they got on the camera, it kind of felt like what I wanted to do, and I used that as like, all right, as far as like a modern interpretation of a car movie, this is what I would kind of want my film to land in. I don't know if we did that at all, but it was just a nice inspiration, because
Inspiration's great. I mean, if you're not
yeah.
inspired by things that you watched, then you're probably dead. So regardless, like Nirvana was influenced by the Pixies. Do they sound like the Pixies? No, but they were super
No.
influenced by the Pixies, so
I
inspiration is
love hearing those stories too. It's like, oh yeah, we were listening to a lot of disco, and I'm like, disco? How does
yeah.
that make sense? And then you hear Dave Grohl like talk about like all these funk bands and
Oh,
all
the
these
beats.
disco
Yeah.
bands.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Like, never would have known, unless you told me. And
Yeah.
I think that's always nice, But I again, like I love making of things, so especially records too.
Oh my God. I could all day long. I could listen to
I can watch a band that I love in the studio uncut, like
yeah.
just keep the camera rolling. I
Well,
don't,
this
you
this
know,
this podcast, we started it just for strictly talking minutia. So we love
mhm.
anything that just like
Yeah,
we would just get together and have these like 2-hour conversations on why Injustice for All is better than Master of Puppets. And like
yeah.
we would just
I
like talk and like we'd be like, wow, we should record this so no one would give a shit.
Well, dude, I could sit here for 3 days straight and discuss that, because when and it's the same thing with films too. It's like when you've watched something enough, or you've listened to these records. I mean, the days of sitting in the back of the car with my headphones on and just listening to the same record on repeat, like for 18 hours to Florida. I mean, I don't think I could do that anymore. But I did it, and I could talk about Master of Puppets and and Justice for All for days because of that. Because I know, and also I've read, oh, what kind of guitars did they use? What kind of amps did they use? What kind of room were they in? All that stuff mattered to me, because what it taught me was it doesn't matter. Like what we have in our phone right now is more than the Beatles had when they made Get Back. And I'm watching them making a Get Back and what it took to get there. And you're like, again, where is the excuse? If you have an idea, you have a song, doesn't matter what room they were recording in, or what kind of camera they used to film something. Like, just make it. It doesn't matter. You have to like let go and just use what you've got, because otherwise you're going to get stuck. There's so many film people out there that, they're 45 years old and they're like, yeah, I had dreams of making a feature. And I'm like, why haven't you? Why don't you? What's stopping you from right now? And it's usually just this expectation of like, oh, well, I want $1 million to make it. And it's like, oh, nobody was giving me $1 million to make my movie. So I said, well, I better get really frugal really quick and figure out how I could do this.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson learned there, is like, sometimes less is more.
So so you said it took you 5 years. Like, uh, in the fifth year, like, how did you know that you were done, that you got everything that you wanted?
It's not done. It's never done.
It's never done. Yeah. The director's cut is still going.
Yeah, it's funny. We're both friends with the guys in TBS, and I've had the pleasure of playing guitar with John Nolan, becoming friends with him, and we were talking about Tell All Your Friends, and how he felt when they dropped that record, and how they just like added all these strings that were not part of the original idea. And he basically came around and said like, I wasn't too happy about it, but it is, it obviously worked. And it just hit me like, it was this moment I was like, I needed somebody to tell me something like that, like that I know, that I trust, that I love. And it got me to this place mentally where I was like, there's going to be a point where you're still not happy with it, but it's good enough. Like, you've gotten it this far into the realm of what you want that you can. And in the fifth year, there was some moments where I was watching the film and I would show it to my wife, and she'd be like, I don't know, something's not working here or whatever. And I'd go into like this depression of like, why is it not working? Why is it not working? And I would come up with an idea how to fix it. And I would grab the actors and say, hey, listen, do you mind coming over to my house? And I just need to film you doing this. I just need to get this over here, little bits and pieces. That was what the last year was really made up of, was like a lot of editing, a lot of scoring, making the music tell a lot of the story. But then it got to this point where I locked in that last little detail, uh, that made the whole film sort of make sense, and felt I like to think of it as like, circular, where it felt like we came back to the beginning in a way that if you were paying
Oh
attention to the
yeah,
film,
yeah. I think
all
so.
the details were there to help you piece together the whole story and leave completed. And it didn't feel like that until literally the last day of me and James editing and going like, that's it. We needed that little piece right there, and now we're done. Could it have been better? Could we have, we had to chop a lot of scenes out to make things work, and that was a sort of a tough thing to have to do, because you have this vision and then you're cutting out some of your favorite stuff. But in the end, it made it better. It would make it feel more swift, and that was kind of a key thing too. Letting
Edit
go.
Editing is pretty tough. I'll bring it back. You brought it to John. I'll bring it to Mark of TBS,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just recording an EP together. And I had a song, and he was just like, the pre-chorus is too long, and I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I'm like, that's the song.
Who do you think you are?
I'm like, you can't change this song. Like, I just like, what are the people at Mr. Beery's gonna think if I let you change this song? But like, when he's like, just cut it, and then I reworked it and I redid it, and it turns out to be like our first single, because he was right. Yeah, but it just bothered me. I was like, cut out the fucking pre-chorus. I'm like, what? Like it just. But at the end of the day, like, when you look at the finished product, you're like, all right. I'm like, all right, he had a point here.
Sometimes wisdom hurts, and we're always looking for people that are much wiser than us to help us in life. And that's why we get into like quarrels with our family, our parents, because we know they're right, but we want to do it our way, or whatever. And sometimes it isn't until years later that we learn these lessons by making the mistake that they were trying to have us avoid. and I've been there many times. And I guess today where I stand is I just try to listen to everybody, and I uh, try to be open minded and try to be um, expansive with that. Like, oh, okay, we could try it that way. There's no hurt in cutting the verse or cutting the pre-chorus a little bit and seeing what happens. And then sometimes you don't even miss it. Like as soon as you're through it and you got, what was on the table there for months or years, and then all of a sudden it's not there, and then you don't miss it, and you're like, I guess that's cool. I guess
Yeah.
we're on the right track, and that's a great feeling. And I've had that many times in my life with great mentors.
Yeah, but it's just, when you're so used to doing something and you have this vision and you hear it, but yeah, it's like, once you're out of it, maybe like a year later, 2 years later, sometimes you're like, all right, good idea, good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But so last three things I wanted to cover
Yeah.
real quick: Master of Puppets or Injustice for All.
Man, both. Because you know what happens is I listen to Master and I'm like, well, now I gotta listen to Injustice. And then if I hear Injustice, I'm like, well, I gotta listen to Master because I love both records so much. I think the meat on the Master of Puppets record, like song wise and like production wise, is like way cooler and better. But I think the raw, intense brutality that happens in Injustice for All is unmatched in that way. I feel like in Injustice um they were kind of like thinner and smaller and scrappier and like vicious. And then by Master, they're these giants and monsters and just ripping through Earth. Like I don't know. They both two different monsters to me
Oh,
that are from the same
yeah,
thing.
absolutely. There was just something about going from Blackened to like the title track Injustice for All, which is a arguably what I think like 10-minute song that never loses me, to then like
Yeah.
something like Harvester of Sorrow, to then like Dyer's Eve. I'm like, oh my god, this is like them doing everything that they do. Like it's like, yo, you want a slow half tempo, you want mid tempo, you want a fucking fast one. But I mean,
Yeah.
both masterpieces. I figured if we talked about it, I had to ask.
But real quick too, just to add, I know we could talk about this all day. One of the things that everybody always gets mad about with Injustice is how low the bass is
Yeah, yep,
from Jason. In a way, I like it, and because somebody came back and like remixed it and
yep,
added more bass, and it was like, oh, it sounds cool. But there's something about like knowing the story of Metallica and how they treated Jason
yeah.
that makes it feel like he's being punished, which makes the guitars feel like they're brutalizing you way more. And then in Master, he obviously rose up a little bit and sonically did the same thing too. So it feels like he becomes more. And I think Jason should have stayed in Metallica. Like he was James Hetfield's little junior brother, whatever. And that attitude, that energy that the two of them brought was like exactly what I wanted, more of. But
Yeah, well,
unfortunately, whatever.
Master of Puppets was definitely Cliff. So
Yeah.
Cliff played there. It's just like when Jason. It's funny when you hear the bass on Justice, but yeah, it's just the songs are just great. But they're two masterpieces.
Wait a minute. Oh yeah,
Uh,
you're right. I'm sorry. I'm. Why did I think? I thought what
maybe you're
Jason
thinking
came in on.
maybe on Justice. Maybe you were thinking Black Album
Yeah, right.
because
So going
he's
up
yeah
that way.
he's like very prominent in the, like you hear the God That Failed, like you hear like a lot of deep cuts on the Black Album, and Jason does this thing, a lot of
Part
great
of my
backup
problem
vocals.
with it is I also got into like earlier albums later. Like I didn't know the order of Metallica until I was older. So
Yeah,
looking back, I still am confused sometimes.
yeah.
Wait, which came first?
Yeah, yeah.
But
I went in probably. Oh, I did the same thing because, like, so I was 10 when Injustice came out. So I think I went maybe to Master and then to the Black Album, because at that point you could go backwards or you can go forwards. So
right,
it's
yeah,
what a great time for that. Second to last question. So 3 car movies that you love. Like, for example, I'll give you 3 that I could think of that are very car centric, but they have a story around them. Christine, John Carpenter's Christine, is fucking a masterpiece. Cannonball Run movies, I just loved as a kid. It's just like the first time I ever saw a Lamborghini, probably, and just like every other cool car. And then The Wraith with Charlie Sheen, man. Those 3 in particular were movies that stuck out to me, where there's a car or cars and a really cool story around it. So,
Yeah. Um, I would like to see a Ghostbusters movie that's just them building Ecto One,
okay.
because I would literally seriously fantasize about, man, how did they take that car and make it look like that? That is awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So that's one that I wish existed. But as far as ones that really are there, I think American Graffiti was really informative to me. I like the aesthetic of that film. I just don't care about the story too much. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's fun. Probably more exciting for people that grew up at that time.
Yeah.
But I think Ford versus Ferrari, modern wise, is masterpiece. I thought it was absolutely perfectly executed, from sound design to production, and obviously killer actors. Um, and I mean, Back to the Future is
Yeah.
such an awesome car movie to me that people don't talk about. But I'm like, this movie is literally about a car like that's traveling through time. It's amazing, and
And
I love the futuristic cars that they took, like a Ford, whatever it was, a Ford Focus, and like put all these body panels on it. And I'm like, that's cool. And then going back in time and seeing all these incredible cars, like, to me, that feels like a car movie to me. But I mean, some people might not agree. But
so that I remember seeing that actual car that they used to make that time machine, and I thought, like, as a kid, I don't know, maybe I was like 7 watching it, I thought that was like it looked like a Porsche almost to me, like I'm like, oh, this car is amazing, only to realize that it was like a hunk of shit like in real life.
yeah,
And I
junk.
yeah, and then that they made it into a time machine. I was like, oh, I thought this was like, all right, but I get it. And then last question, now that you have this movie out of the way, if you could make a second movie, like, what would you like to do?
I got a few scripts that I'm working on, just to have in case things go well. Because at this point, I don't think I have it in me to finance and do another film by myself quite yet. Maybe down the road, but yeah, I'd like to do a horror film. My birthday is October 31st,
Oh
1985. So
man.
I
Oh,
like to think I
first
was
of all, hold
born
on.
in
Let
the
me cut you
evil
off.
darkness of the
Let,
year,
let me cut you off because I had no idea that I was that much older than you. Jesus Christ. You're a kid.
Oh.
You're a fucking kid. All right, go ahead.
You're older than me,
I'm fucking way older than you, man.
dude. I literally thought you were
I
like
thought we were the same age.
27 to 30,
Nah,
maybe.
I'm fucking
Wow.
44 years old. Yeah,
Whoa.
I was born in
Dude, good for
1978.
you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
amazing, dude. Wow.
Horror
What
movie.
was the question?
No,
Oh
we
yeah.
were talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do a horror movie. I also have this World War II story that I'd really love to do, that I think could be pretty awesome, and definitely have a good concept. I think that would be like something that we wouldn't need to storm the beach of Normandy to do. A little more like a side quest kind of story. My grandfather fought in World War II, so I just got his like war log over here, and
Wow.
going through it, and I have a concept there. And I also have another one about, I'd love to do a film about a band and do some music
Yeah.
stuff, because I think I know a lot about drag racing, but I think I know more about what it's like to be in a band than anything else on this earth. And I think I could probably tell a pretty good story. And I got a cool one lined up that I'd love to execute, and bring some people in on that I've met along the way. So who knows, man? But it all is dependent on if we could actually get this movie out there and get some people to want to maybe finance it or partner up on it. But you know,
Well,
I'm not shopping yet. I'm just kind of. I think sometimes when you do these film festivals, that's kind of what winds up happening. Is maybe we'll win something at one of these things where somebody will see it and go, "Wow, look what this guy did with nothing. What if we gave him, 50 grand?" I'm like, "Well, I got this script I could do for 50 grand. What if we
yeah.
gave him a 500,000? Well, we could do this one. I want to have like a couple of different things lined up just in case. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Might as well."
those are like three like really cool topics, especially like obviously I'm a horror guy and a band guy. I just recently saw this movie called The Incoherence. I'll just read the synopsis. So it's like 440 somethings each mired in some sort of midlife malaise reunite their 90s indie rock band, and it's called The
What's your
Incoherence.
favorite band movie? What's
Oh,
your
my
favorite band
favorite,
movie?
like documentary or like
Anything that made like for me, watching, even like uh, that thing you do as a kid. Like I was like, oh man,
oh
I really want to be in a
man,
band. I want to be in a band. I
that
want to make music.
that movie is really good. That movie still
Execution
holds up.
wise, it's amazing. Yeah, like those guys played the drums and the guitar, and like you watch it, and it's like as a musician, you're like, that looks pretty accurate. Because so many times you watch these films and you're like, you're not playing. I just watched Stranger Things last night, and not to ruin anything, but there's this moment the guy's playing Master of Puppets, and like I could tell he's not playing Master of Puppets, he's not how to play it, but it looks pretty good. And there's acceptable amounts of like, you know, not being not having continuity. And then there's movies like that thing you do where you're watching, you're like, he's playing that chord, and I hear that chord, and that's the right fill. And um, I like seeing those things. There was this movie that came out like a couple of years ago. I forget the name of it. I think Patrick Stewart's in it, and he like runs like this Nazi punk
Oh
rock
yeah, yeah. Green Room.
green room. Thought that was great. I thought that was one of
That
those
that dude
movies
makes
that felt kind of
great.
authentic.
That
I've
movie
been
that
to places like that. I'm like, oh, get me out of here.
so that guy makes really cool movies. He made a movie called Par- Monster Party, I think it was, and then one before Green Room called Blue Ruin, which was just like this like revenge story. But you don't like it's just really good. But Green Room was really good. As far as like
As a touring musician, man, you land on these places, especially when you're younger, and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. I've never been to Virginia. I've never been to some of these
yeah.
states, and then you pull up to this venue, and you're like, I don't know if we're supposed to be here,
Yeah, yeah,
And there's this moment for the characters. I'm like, I know exactly how this feels right
yeah. They're like this song's
So that
called
was one of
Not
the good ones.
Nazi Punks Fuck Off, and you're like, I don't know if you should play this here. um,
They don't want to hear that for some reason.
God, I'm thinking like one of the coolest stories. So the band Brian Jonestown Massacre have a documentary, and it's called Dig. And it's a band that some people know, some people might not know, but that might have been like one of the greatest like musical documentaries I've ever seen about a band where the singer was just such a self-saboteur. Like anytime he would like get some sort of
Mm-hmm.
like opportunity or success, like he would just like ruin it. Oh, this dude
Mm.
is out of his fucking mind. Like they had like a showcase for a label, and I guess one of the guitar players was playing the wrong note, and they had a fist fight on stage. And you see video footage of him like kicking him, and they start punching each other, and you just like there's just something like so outrageous and like almost like borderline like mentally ill about like completely being like, oh, here's a showcase, let's just completely ruin it.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've been a part of it. I guess Sugarman was another.
Yeah, well,
Sugarman.
yeah, the search for
That
Sugarman.
was one where it was just like, what a tragedy.
Yeah.
Like not self sabotage, just unbelievable story of how it didn't work out. But that's
uh
the thing about like music stories and stuff. They're so inspiring from so many different angles, and I watched Get Back the whole way through, and I was like, I could turn this back on again and watch it tomorrow, because
certain
I just
yeah
love some
the
bands too, especially if it's the right I mean, I remember Thrice when they put out Artist in the Ambulance, they did like this DVD of like, oh,
I
this is how we made it and us working up to here. I must have watched that like 40, 50 times because I was like, I want to be in this band.
that band in particular, so that band was really interesting because they had such a unique sound where they were borderline a pop punk band that played like metal riffs, and you're like, wow, this is interesting. But then Artists in the Ambulance came, and they kind of really just like opened, like that album was the king of the hill for like a year or two, like when they were touring
It
that.
changed the trajectory for me of music because I was like, oh, this is because I came from like I was like into metal. I
Yeah.
wasn't really into like newer music when I was younger, and so like I heard Deftones and Glassjaw.
Okay.
But then I heard Thrice, and I was like, I could see myself in a band like this where we're singing melodies and we're singing harmonies, and we're screaming and
Harmonies.
we're
Yeah.
going into breakdowns. It's sort of like the culmination of everything I liked about modern music at that time, you know.
Yeah, that record was a big fucking deal. Like I never played like that. I was more of like, I mean, I grew up a metal kid, but also heavily into hip hop. But as I got like into my teens, it was more of like Archers of Loaf and like Pavement and Sonic Youth. Like I was more of an indie rock kid, as like my friends were hardcore guys. But like when Artists came out, like that was one of those records that I was just like, this is like, it's like every good part of every genre mixed
Yeah,
into one.
yeah.
You're like, how are they singing these harmonies and melodies on the guitar? Like it was just really, really good. Thrice is super talented. I think that definitely might be the top of their sonic mountain for sure, though. And
Mm.
Deftones was always a big deal to me. And a
White
band.
Pony, man. When I heard that, I felt like I had never done drugs in my life, but I felt like I took drugs. Like I was like, this must be what it's like to be stoned or something. Because I when I first heard that, it took me into like another dimension, and it still sort of does when I put that record on. Like, man, this is a special sound. You know, this is something unique.
Did
And
you?
then you hear all these other bands fighting it, you know, for all
Oh
time.
yeah,
But
but did you like Around the Fur?
yeah, I mean, it just wasn't until I felt like White Pony that like sonically we were going into this another universe. You know, I felt like the earlier record, you know, for sure was more punk and just
It was like
more
raw. It was like a
raw.
more raw
Yeah,
record for sure. And
yeah,
White Pony had like elements like where Chino was able to express his love for like The Cure and Depeche Mode more, which I know
yeah.
Stefan is not a big fan of. So they
Right.
they those two
That's what
definitely.
makes the suit.
Yeah, that those two definitely have the pull and push on in that band. And I think it wasn't until later on. I feel like once they hit Diamond Eyes and the Koi No Yoken album, I feel like those two records are the two best records that they ever put out. I feel like White Pony is there too, but like sonically and like just production wise, you're like, oh, okay, you guys just shot up to the stars on this, and I feel like
You've seen The Butcher? Is that the name of the
yeah,
song
yeah,
that's
yeah,
on?
yeah, yeah.
Dude,
That riff,
first of all, the video for that is
yeah.
awesome. But that riff,
That riff is killer. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, man, that is juicy. Like I could listen to that riff all day.
Yeah.
The drums in that. I think Abe is just one of the tastiest drummers. Doesn't overplay, but plays enough to make you go, I can't do that, you know. And I
Well,
love that,
yo, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for
dude. Thanks for having me, man.
telling us about your movie. I guess like how could people watch it right now?
Um, they could come out to a showing. We're gonna have more coming up. Right now, we're just getting ready to do some of these film festivals. Hopefully, that's the next like kind of move, and then probably towards the end of the year, once I either do or don't hear back from Sundance, that'll be sort of like the cap on it. Like, all right, now we just start figuring out digital distribution. But for right now, it'd be great if people could follow us on
Just screen.
Instagram
Okay.
or Facebook just to kind of stay in the loop. And when we have showings, they can come out.
I'll put the
And
link
then
up with
we'll
everything.
let you know when it's available to watch online for sure. Because there's a lot of people obviously across the country that want to see it now that they're not going to make it to a showing. So I just tell them follow us, and as soon as it's available, you guys could jump in.
Do you have
So
like is there like a website or is it just like the Instagram?
Yeah, you can go to sundaysundayfilm.com. It's
Okay.
also the handle on Instagram, Sunday Film, and on Facebook. And yeah, just give us a follow. We got trailers. We got like I just started putting up some of the songs that I wrote for it and did for it.
Oh, Ride On. What? Who did that?
I did that. Yeah, yeah.
That's fucking really good. It's
Thanks,
just
man.
like
Yeah,
so like the beginning, like I guess it's after like the I don't want to say like I
intro
guess,
credits.
yeah, I guess it's like like the accident that happens, I guess you could say. I mean,
Yeah,
it's right in the beginning for anyone who's
yeah.
but it just like even the font and like the yeah, it's just cool. Like it really, like, and then the song, I was like, I don't even know if it's like him or like I thought it was like an old song. I was like, I don't know. It just had that like like I'm a Tarantino like
Yep,
lover,
we got it.
and it just
Yeah.
had that cool vibe to it. So that's really
I
awesome.
kind of looked at the movie a little bit as like a mixtape. I was like, I want there to be a song like because John Nolan does like a little cameo in it, and that song is more like a hardcore "Every Time I Die" thing, not on purpose to. It just felt fitting for the type of scene it was. But in the intro of the movie, I was like, I want Johnny Cash on this, and I'm not going to get him. So let me just do something that gives me that vibe, and I'll
Yeah,
just write my own thing for it. And then those two songs are on the same soundtrack somehow, and that's the kind of Tarantino thing I like, where it's like almost John Wayne kind of songs,
it
and then
is.
you got Rick Ross coming in on one track, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
How does this work?
I
Because it's
love.
working,
I love that, and he's great at like like you'll get like Dick Dale, and then you'll hear like Son of a Preacher Man. You're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? You're like, but it's just like everything's perfect. So I think
It's
that
like Halloween, man. You put on a costume and you just play that role, and then it's like, all right, what's the next one? All right, we got to get
yes.
a little Danny Elfman on this.
Well,
Okay.
listen. Hopefully, I get to be in the Halloween in the horror movie. I just want to die in a movie. So if you need someone
Okay,
dying, I'm very
I
good.
got you. Next one.
Right?
Yep.
Fat guy dies in movie. Yo, Anthony, thanks for hanging out. I'll put like all the links up and stuff. Like I'll drop it on Monday, or maybe
Okay,
I
cool,
guess
man.
it's the 4th of July, so maybe I'll just do it on Tuesday.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
when people are going back to work,
yeah,
be much
yeah, for
fun.
sure. I forget, but I will talk to you soon.
Thanks again, brother. I really appreciate you having me,
I
man, and I'm
appreciate
glad we got to
you.
do this.
Yeah, man. Long overdue. So I'm a
Yeah,
fan of everything you do, and I will see you
likewise,
soon
bro.
in the flesh.
All right, man. Take
Later,
it easy,
bud.
brother.